Be me, Rachel, 29, working in corporate accounting for 3 years. Finally landed a decent job at mid-sized consulting firm after grinding through entry-level positions. Wake up every morning knowing I'm making a difference by calling out workplace inequality. Today starts like any other day, reviewing quarterly reports and preparing for afternoon meeting. Notice immediately that David scheduled our project review for 2 p.m. in Conference Room B. Conference Room B has glass walls completely visible to entire office. This is obviously intentional, another microaggression designed to make me feel surveilled. David could have easily chosen Conference Room A, which has privacy and better acoustics. But no, he deliberately picks the fishbowl room where everyone can watch us. Classic power move, establishing dominance through environmental control. Decide to address this head-on rather than let it slide like I used to. March over to David's desk around 10:30 a.m. Hey David, I noticed you booked Conference Room B for our meeting today. Yeah, it was the only one available for that time slot. Actually, I checked the system and Conference Room A was open from 2 to 4 p.m. David looks uncomfortable, starts fidgeting with his pen. Oh well, Room B has the better projector setup for the presentation. David, we're reviewing spreadsheets. We don't need a projector. Can see him getting flustered as I dismantle his weak excuses one by one. Look, Rachel, Room B is fine. Let's just stick with what's booked. This is about visibility, isn't it? You want other people to see our meeting. What? No, that's ridiculous. It's a classic intimidation tactic, choosing the most exposed meeting space to make me feel vulnerable. David's face is getting red now. Exactly the reaction I expected. Rachel, you're reading way too much into a simple room booking. Am I, though? Because this fits a clear pattern of behavior. Spend next 10 minutes explaining how room selection reflects unconscious bias. Point out how male colleagues consistently get private offices for sensitive discussions. Meanwhile, women are relegated to open spaces where their conversations can be monitored. David keeps trying to interrupt, but I stay focused and methodical. Present evidence of previous meetings, document the disparity in room assignments. Finally, he agrees to switch to Conference Room A. Small victory, but these add up over time. Systemic change happens through persistent challenge of everyday inequities. Feel energized knowing I successfully advocated for myself. This is exactly why women need to speak up instead of accepting unfair treatment. Around 11:45 a.m., decide to grab coffee before lunch. Break room is usually empty this time of day, perfect for quick caffeine fix. Can hear voices as I approach the coffee station. Recognize David's voice immediately, sounds stressed. Also, hear Oliver from IT and James from sales. They're speaking in hushed tones near the microwave. Not intentionally eavesdropping, but their conversation is clearly audible. I'm telling you guys, it's getting out of hand, David is saying. She spent 15 minutes lecturing me about room assignments this morning. Everything is some kind of conspiracy or microaggression with her. Pause behind the corner, coffee cup in hand. Should probably announce my presence, but curiosity gets the better of me. Remember last month when she filed that complaint about the office temperature, Oliver says, claimed the thermostat was set to favor male comfort levels. Had to sit through a whole HR meeting about HVAC gender bias. They're talking about me, obviously. Feel mix of vindication and frustration. Vindication because they're proving my point about dismissive male attitudes. Frustration because they're completely missing the substance of my concerns. And don't get me started on the parking lot incident, James adds. She accused me of mansplaining when I offered to help her change that flat tire. Apparently suggesting she might need assistance was patronizing and sexist. I was just trying to be helpful, you know? Roll my eyes internally. James completely misunderstood that situation. Offering help wasn't the problem. It was his assumption that I couldn't handle it myself. Look, I get that workplace equality is important, David continues, but she makes everything into some huge feminist issue. Can't have a normal conversation without getting a lecture about patriarchal structures. Yesterday she told me that saying you guys is exclusionary language. Suggested I say team or everyone instead. I mean, come on, it's just an expression. Want to march in there and explain why language matters. How seemingly innocent phrases reinforce gender hierarchies. but decide to keep listening, gather intelligence about their attitudes. Knowledge is power in these situations. Better to understand their perspective before responding. The thing is, she's actually good at her job, Oliver admits. Those quarterly projections she prepared were really solid. But working with her feels like walking through a minefield. Never know what innocent comment is going to trigger the next diversity seminar. Interesting that he acknowledges my competence. Shows their resistance isn't based on questioning my abilities. It's purely about discomfort with having their privilege challenged. That's exactly the problem, James says. She's smart and she knows it. Uses every interaction as an opportunity to educate us about our unconscious bias. Makes you feel like you're constantly being judged and found wanting. They're describing my efforts to raise awareness as if it's somehow problematic. Classic deflection technique, making the messenger into the problem. Honestly, I've started avoiding one-on-one meetings with her, David says. Too risky. You never know what might get misconstrued. Last time we worked, late on that budget analysis, she mentioned how the office lighting creates an intimidating atmosphere after hours. Made this whole connection between masculine-coded workspaces and women's sense of safety. Had to listen to 20 minutes about environmental psychology and gender dynamics. Remember that conversation clearly. Was trying to help David understand why late meetings can feel different for women. Apparently, he interpreted educational discussion as personal attack. I hear you, man, Oliver responds. Same here. I always make sure there are other people around when we need to collaborate. Document everything. Keep witnesses present. It's just safer that way. Heart starts beating faster as the implications sink in. They're actively avoiding private interactions with me, treating me like some kind of threat or liability. This goes beyond simple disagreement about workplace issues. They're systematically excluding me from normal professional relationships. We should probably establish this as a policy between us, James suggests. Just to protect ourselves. Never be alone with her. Ever. The words hit like a physical blow. Never be alone with her, ever. They're talking about me like I'm dangerous. Like I'm some predator they need to defend themselves against. That's probably smart, David agrees. I'll make sure Oliver is included in any project meetings going forward. And if she wants to discuss something sensitive, I'll insist on having HR present. Better safe than sorry. Feel tears starting to form in my eyes. This is so much worse than I imagined. Thought I was building bridges, creating dialogue, fostering understanding. Instead, I've apparently become persona non grata in my own workplace. They're creating formal protocols to avoid being alone with me. It's not that we don't respect her, Oliver says. She's obviously passionate about these issues. But you can't have a normal working relationship when every conversation turns into a teaching moment about systemic oppression. It's exhausting, Want to scream that educating people about inequality shouldn't be my job. But someone has to do it. And clearly they're not going to learn on their own. Exactly, James says. And God forbid you disagree with her about anything. Remember when she explained how me holding the door was actually an expression of benevolent sexism? Apparently I was reinforcing gender stereotypes about women needing assistance. Now, I have no idea how to act around her. Back away from the coffee station quietly. Don't want them to know I overheard their conversation. Need time to process what I just learned. Head back to my desk feeling completely shaken. Sit down and stare at my computer screen. Words from their conversation keep echoing in my head. Never be alone with her, ever. How did things get to this point? All I wanted was to create a more equitable workplace, to help my colleagues understand how their behavior affects women. Instead, I've apparently made myself into some kind of pariah. They see me as a threat rather than an ally. This is the opposite of what I was trying to achieve. Spend the rest of the morning replaying recent interactions, trying to see them from their perspective. Maybe I have been coming on too strong, but how else are you supposed to address workplace inequality? If you don't speak up, nothing changes. If you do speak up, people get defensive and resentful. It's an impossible situation. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. The afternoon meeting with David approaches. Now I understand why he wanted conference room B. He wanted witnesses present, protection against whatever he imagines I might do. The whole room booking argument this morning makes perfect sense now. He wasn't trying to intimidate me. He was trying to protect himself. Feel foolish for misreading the situation so completely. 2 p.m. arrives, and I walk into conference room A. David shows up with Oliver in tow. Hope you don't mind, I asked Oliver to join us, David says. He's been working on some related financial modeling. Oliver looks uncomfortable, clearly doesn't want to be there. Now I know the real reason for his presence. They're implementing their never alone policy already. Try to focus on the quarterly projections, but keep getting distracted. Every comment feels loaded with subtext now. When I suggest adjustments to the revenue forecasts, David nods politely but doesn't engage. No back and forth discussion like we used to have, just perfunctory agreement designed to end the conversation quickly. Oliver takes notes on everything, creating their precious documentation. Meeting wraps up in half the expected time. Normally, David and I would spend another 20 minutes discussing implementation details. Today, he's clearly eager to escape. Great work on these projections, Rachel, he says formally. Oliver and I will review the recommendations and get back to you. They're treating me like an outside consultant rather than a team member. Polite, professional, but completely impersonal. Watch them leave together, probably going to debrief about our interaction. Sit alone in the conference room feeling completely isolated. This isn't what I wanted at all. I wanted connection, understanding, progress toward equality. Instead, I've created an environment where my colleagues feel they need protection from me. Rest of the week follows the same pattern. Every interaction is carefully managed and witnessed. James makes sure other people are around when discussing the client presentation. Oliver brings a colleague to our monthly systems review. Even casual conversations feel stilted and artificial. They're friendly enough on the surface, but there's an invisible barrier now. They know that I know, even though we've never acknowledged the overheard conversation. The dynamic has fundamentally shifted. I've become the problem that needs to be managed, rather than the colleague they collaborate with. All those discussions about workplace equality that I thought were productive. Apparently, they experienced them as lectures and accusations. Friday afternoon, sitting at my desk reviewing the week. Realized that in trying to fix workplace inequality, I might have made it worse, at least for myself. My male colleagues now see me as a liability to be carefully handled, rather than a person to build genuine professional relationships with. They're not learning about unconscious bias. They're just developing better defense mechanisms. Sophisticated strategies for avoiding any behavior that might trigger my feminist analysis. The conversations continue, but they're sanitized and meaningless, stripped of the authentic human connection that makes work relationships valuable. They comply with my requests, but don't internalize the reasoning behind them. Surface-level behavioral modification without any deeper understanding. Wonder if there was a different approach I could have taken. Maybe more gradual, less confrontational. But then again, how long should women wait for men to figure out equality on their own? How many microaggressions should we tolerate while waiting for organic change? The whole situation feels like a trap with no good options. Speak up and be labeled as difficult and overly sensitive. Stay quiet and watch inequality perpetuate itself unchecked. There's no winning strategy when the system is designed to resist change. My colleagues aren't evil people, they're just comfortable with the status quo. Challenging that comfort was always going to create friction. Maybe I underestimated how much friction they were willing to tolerate. Monday morning, decide to try a different approach. Instead of addressing systemic issues directly, focus on building better individual relationships. Maybe if they see me as a person first, they'll be more receptive to learning later. Walk into the break room where David is, making coffee. Morning, David. How was your weekend? He looks up nervously, glances around to see who else is present. Oh, hi Rachel. Weekend was good, just did some yard work. Clearly wants to end the conversation quickly. I've been thinking about our project timeline, I continue. Maybe we could grab lunch sometime this week and discuss the next phase. David's face goes pale. Actually, I think it would be better to handle that in our regular team meetings. More efficient that way, keeps everyone in the loop. Translation, not happening without witnesses. Try the same approach with Oliver later in the day. Hey, Oliver, I noticed some inconsistencies in the database queries. Could you walk me through the logic when you have a chance? Sure, let me set up a meeting with the whole IT team. We can review the entire system architecture together. Again, refusing any one-on-one interaction, they've turned my desire for workplace equality into a scarlet letter, marking me as someone who can't be trusted with private conversations. Every attempt at normal professional relationship gets deflected through group settings. They're treating me like I have some contagious disease. The disease of asking uncomfortable questions about gender dynamics. By Wednesday, the isolation is really getting to me. Used to enjoy coming to work, felt like I was part of a team. Now it feels like being tolerated rather than welcomed. Included in group settings, but carefully excluded from informal interactions. The spontaneous conversations that build real workplace relationships. Coffee breaks, casual problem-solving sessions, after-hours collaboration. All of that has dried up completely. I'm functionally quarantined within my own office. My colleagues have found a way to be technically inclusive while remaining emotionally distant. They've figured out how to neutralize my impact without appearing overtly discriminatory. Thursday afternoon, overhear David talking to James near the printer. She seems different this week, David says. Less confrontational. Maybe she's finally getting the message. Could be, though I'm still not taking any chances. Better to maintain the boundaries we established. Getting the message. They think my quieter approach means I've given up on workplace equality, that I've learned my lesson about challenging male privilege. But really, I'm just trying to figure out a more effective strategy. The direct approach clearly backfired. Need to find a way to create change without triggering their defensive responses. Problem is, once you're labeled as the difficult feminist, everything you do gets interpreted through that lens. Friday evening, reflecting on the whole situation, realize that my male colleagues have essentially won without having to change anything. They've successfully isolated the troublemaker while maintaining plausible deniability. Can claim they're treating me professionally while ensuring I have no real influence. They've created a system where I can voice concerns in formal settings, but have no informal channels to build the relationships that actually drive change. It's a sophisticated form of workplace marginalization, technically compliant with HR policies, but effectively exclusionary. They've learned to manage the feminist threat rather than address the underlying issues. My passionate advocacy for equality has been neutralized through strategic avoidance, sitting in my car after work, feeling completely defeated. Started this job 3 years ago with such optimism. Thought I could make a difference by raising awareness about gender inequality. Instead, I've made myself into a cautionary tale. The woman who talks too much about feminism and makes everyone uncomfortable. They've turned my commitment to justice into a personal failing. Reframed systemic inequality as my individual problem. Now I'm the one who needs to modify my behavior. While they continue operating exactly as they always have, just with better defensive strategies to protect themselves from accountability. The worst part is understanding that they genuinely see themselves as the victims. In their minds, I'm the aggressor who forced them into these protective measures. They're not discriminating against me. They're defending themselves against false accusations. They're not avoiding accountability. They're maintaining professional boundaries. They've constructed a narrative where my advocacy for equality becomes harassment, and their systematic exclusion becomes reasonable self-preservation. It's a perfect inversion of the power dynamic, turning the oppressed into the oppressor through clever reframing. Wonder how many other women have gone through similar experiences. How many times has passionate advocacy been neutralized through strategic isolation? How many feminists have been marginalized by being labeled as difficult or extreme? The system doesn't need to silence women directly anymore. It just needs to make the cost of speaking up higher than the cost of staying quiet. Make advocacy so socially expensive that most people choose compliance. My colleagues didn't need to fire me or formally discipline me. They just needed to make work uncomfortable enough that I'd self-regulate. Modify my own behavior to avoid further conflict. Start to understand why so many women choose to keep their heads down. Why they focus on individual advancement rather than systemic change. Why they avoid being labeled as the office feminist. Because once you get that label, your effectiveness is permanently compromised. You become the person others warn each other about, the one who makes simple interactions complicated and risky. Better to work within the system quietly than challenge it openly. At least that way you maintain relationships and career prospects, even if you never actually change anything meaningful. Monday morning, decide to test my theory. Walk into the office and greet everyone, normally. Don't mention gender, equality, microaggressions, or systemic bias. Just focus on work tasks and neutral professional conversation. Immediately notice the difference in how people respond. David actually smiles when discussing the quarterly reports. Oliver makes eye contact during our team meeting. James includes me in his joke about the new coffee machine. They're relieved that I'm acting normal, again, that the difficult feminist phase seems to be over. Spend the next few weeks maintaining this new persona. Bite my tongue when David interrupts me 3 times during the budget presentation. Say nothing when the new hire gets assigned the high-profile client that I was promised. Ignore the fact that every company social event revolves around traditionally masculine activities. Pretend not to notice when Oliver consistently explains basic concepts that I already understand. Watch my female colleagues get talked over in meetings without speaking up. Become complicit in the very system I used to challenge. But my relationships with male colleagues gradually improve. They start including me in informal conversations again. Invite me to lunch meetings and after-work drinks. By the end of the month, I've been successfully reintegrated into the team. They trust me not to turn every interaction into a lecture about privilege. I'm back to being seen as a competent colleague rather than a walking HR liability. The never be alone with her ever policy has been quietly abandoned. David schedules one-on-one meetings without bringing chaperones. Oliver asks for my input on technical problems without documenting our conversations. James even holds doors for me again, confident that I won't analyze the gender implications. I've learned to be the kind of woman they're comfortable with. Professional, competent, but careful not to challenge their worldview too directly. The irony is overwhelming. Succeeded in rebuilding professional relationships by abandoning the principles that mattered most to me. Gained acceptance by accepting inequality. They think I've matured and become more reasonable. Really, I've just learned to hide my convictions better, to pick battles more carefully, to package feminist concerns in language that doesn't trigger their defensive responses. It's not progress, it's just more sophisticated oppression. Teaching women to advocate for equality in ways that don't make men uncomfortable, which means not advocating very effectively at all. 3 months later, sitting in my car after another productive workday. Successful project completed, positive feedback from supervisors, good relationships with colleagues. Everything is going well professionally, except I feel like I've betrayed everything I used to believe in, become complicit in maintaining the very inequalities I once fought against. My male colleagues learn that they can neutralize feminist advocacy through strategic social pressure. No need for formal retaliation or explicit discrimination. Just make advocacy socially costly enough that women choose silence. They've successfully trained me to self-censor, to prioritize their comfort over my principles, to value their acceptance more than systemic change. Realize this is exactly how workplace inequality perpetuates itself. Not through overt discrimination that can be challenged through HR, but through subtle social dynamics that make resistance personally costly. Women learn to choose career success over principled advocacy, individual advancement over collective progress. They fragment potential opposition by forcing each woman to choose between belonging and beliefs. Most choose belonging, understandably, which means the system continues unchanged. My colleagues' strategy worked perfectly. They identified the feminist threat, isolated it, and neutralized it through social pressure. Now I'm living proof that women can succeed in their workplace, as long as we don't challenge their privilege too directly. The most depressing part is knowing that they genuinely believe they handled the situation well. They think they found a reasonable compromise that works for everyone. I get to keep my job and participate in office culture. They get to maintain their comfortable assumptions about gender dynamics. Everybody wins, except for the principle of equality that got sacrificed along the way. They've learned to manage feminist concerns rather than address them, to contain advocacy rather than engage with it meaningfully. It's a perfect system for maintaining the status quo while appearing progressive. They can point to my success as evidence that their workplace treats women fairly, while ignoring the fact that my success required abandoning any challenge to gender inequality. 6 months later, training a new female hire named Sarah. Watch her go through the same process I did. Initially enthusiastic about advocating for workplace equity, pointing out subtle biases and suggesting improvements to company culture. See my male colleagues' expressions when she brings up gender-inclusive language, the familiar eye rolls and uncomfortable silences. Know exactly what conversations they're having about her in the break room. Can practically hear them establishing new never be alone with her policies. The cycle is starting all over again, and I'm now part of the system that will teach her to moderate her advocacy, to choose acceptance over principles. Part of me wants to warn Sarah about what's coming, to help her navigate the social dynamics more effectively than I did. But another part of me knows that would just make me complicit in the process, teaching her to accommodate inequality rather than challenge it, showing her how to advocate for equality in ways that don't actually threaten the status quo. Instead, I watch silently as she repeats my mistakes, speaking truth to power in ways that make power uncomfortable, triggering the same defensive responses that eventually isolated me. She'll learn the same lessons I learned, about the cost of principled advocacy in environments that resist change, about how systems protect themselves by marginalizing those who challenge them. A year later, both Sarah and I have found our places in the office ecosystem. We're successful, respected, professionally fulfilled. We've learned to work within existing power structures rather than challenge them, to focus on individual achievement rather than systemic change. Our male colleagues congratulate themselves on how well they've adapted to having strong women on the team, how they've learned to value our contributions and treat us as equals. They genuinely believe they've evolved and become more enlightened. Really, they've just gotten better at managing potential threats to their privilege, more sophisticated in their methods of neutralizing feminist advocacy. They've learned to appear inclusive while maintaining exclusive control. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I'd persisted, if I'd refused to modify my advocacy regardless of social consequences. Maybe I would have been marginalized permanently. Maybe I would have been forced to find work elsewhere. Or maybe, just maybe, I would have eventually broken through their resistance, forced them to engage with uncomfortable truths about workplace inequality, created real change instead of the superficial accommodation we ended up with. But I'll never know because I chose the path of least resistance, the path that preserved my career at the expense of my convictions, the path that my male colleagues carefully constructed to neutralize my impact. What I know for certain is that they won, not through superior arguments or moral authority, but through superior strategy and social pressure. They figured out how to make feminism personally costly, how to isolate advocates and force them to choose between belonging and beliefs, how to maintain inequality while appearing reasonable and professional. They turned my passion for justice into a liability, my advocacy for equality into a source of workplace tension, my commitment to change into evidence of my own difficult personality. It was a masterful manipulation that left me questioning my own perceptions, wondering if maybe I really had been too confrontational, too demanding, too idealistic. The genius of their approach was making me complicit in my own silencing, convincing me that modifying my advocacy was a mature, reasonable compromise, that learning to work within existing systems was more effective than challenging them. They didn't silence me through force. They taught me to silence myself, to internalize their comfort as more important than my principles, to value their acceptance more than systemic justice. Now, when new women join the company with feminist ideals, I find myself subtly discouraging them from being too vocal, suggesting they focus on building relationships before challenging inequalities, teaching them the same lessons my male colleagues taught me about the importance of not making people uncomfortable, about picking battles carefully and moderating their approach. realize I've become part of the machinery that perpetuates workplace inequality, not through malicious intent, but through learned helplessness, through the accumulated wisdom that resistance is futile and accommodation is survival. My male colleagues successfully converted a potential agent of change into a guardian of the status quo. They didn't need to defeat my arguments. They just needed to defeat my willingness to make those arguments, to exhaust my capacity for conflict and replace it with desire for belonging. Now I help train other women to make the same compromises I made, to choose career success over principled advocacy, to work within systems of inequality rather than challenge them directly. The most painful realization is that this strategy works because it exploits genuine human needs, the need for professional acceptance, financial security, social belonging. They didn't ask me to abandon my principles outright, just to express them more diplomatically, to advocate for equality in ways that didn't threaten existing power structures, to focus on individual advancement rather than systemic change. It seemed reasonable at the time, a mature compromise that acknowledged practical realities. But really, it was a trap that neutered my effectiveness while preserving the illusion of progress. 3 years later, I'm successful by every conventional measure. Good performance reviews, salary increases, respect from colleagues, invited to company social events, consulted on important decisions, included in the informal networks that drive real organizational power. My male colleagues point to my success as evidence of their commitment to gender equality, proof that women can thrive in their workplace if they approach things the right way. The right way being their way, the way that preserves their comfort while providing opportunities for women, who learn to advocate for equality without actually challenging inequality, who focus on individual achievement rather than collective empowerment, who become success stories that justify the continued marginalization of those who won't compromise. Sitting in my office now, looking out at the bullpen where Sarah works, watch her navigate the same dynamics I once faced, see her learning the same lessons about the cost of principled advocacy, gradually moderating her approach to avoid social isolation, choosing acceptance over confrontation, becoming another success story in the company's diversity narrative. Another example of how women can succeed if they just learn to work within existing systems. I want to feel proud of how far we've both come, but mostly I feel sad about how little has actually changed. The same inequalities persist. We've just learned to accommodate them more gracefully, to succeed, despite the system, rather than transform it. My male colleagues have perfected the art of appearing progressive while maintaining control. They've learned the language of diversity and inclusion. They attend sensitivity trainings and participate in mentorship programs. They promote women who demonstrate they can succeed without challenging the fundamental power structure. They point to our achievements as evidence of their enlightened leadership, while continuing to operate according to the same assumptions about gender and power. They've successfully separated individual advancement from systemic change, allowing for female success stories while preserving male privilege, creating the appearance of progress without the substance of transformation. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if Sarah and I collaborated, if we joined forces with other women in the company, if we developed a coordinated strategy for addressing workplace inequality. But I know the answer already. We would face the same isolation and pressure that neutralized my individual efforts. Probably worse, since collective action would be seen as more threatening. They would find ways to divide us, to reward some for their cooperation while punishing others for their resistance, to maintain the illusion that individual merit determines success, while ensuring that merit is defined according to their comfort level. The system is too sophisticated to be challenged by conventional advocacy, too adaptive to be defeated by principled resistance. The real tragedy is that my male colleagues aren't evil people. They're not consciously conspiring to maintain gender inequality. They genuinely believe they've created a fair and inclusive workplace. They point to women's success as evidence of their progressive values. They celebrate diversity while preserving homogeneity of thought. They've learned to manage feminist concerns without addressing feminist critiques, to accommodate women without empowering them, to appear enlightened while maintaining traditional power structures. They've convinced themselves that they've evolved, when really they've just gotten better at neutralizing threats to their privilege. 5 years into this job, I've become everything I once criticized: a successful professional woman who validates the system by thriving within it, who demonstrates that gender equality isn't necessary because individual women can succeed, who proves that advocacy isn't needed because accommodation is sufficient. My career trajectory has become evidence against the very arguments I used to make about systemic barriers and structural inequality. My male colleagues can point to my success and ask what more women want. If I could make it here, why can't others? What's stopping them besides their own choices and attitudes? My achievement has become a weapon against women who still struggle, proof that the system works for those willing to work within it. Realize that this is the ultimate victory for those who want to preserve inequality, not the elimination of successful women, but their conversion into advocates for the status quo. Not the silencing of feminist voices, but their transformation into testimonies for incremental progress. Not the prevention of change, but its redirection into channels that preserve existing power structures. They've learned to use our successes against our principles, to turn our achievements into arguments against systemic transformation, to make us complicit in maintaining the very inequalities we once sought to challenge. It's a more sophisticated form of oppression than outright exclusion, more effective because it enlists the oppressed in policing themselves and others. Looking back on that conversation I overheard in the break room, never be alone with her, ever. Understand now that it was just the beginning, the crude early stage of a strategy that eventually became much more refined. They learned that isolation and exclusion were too obvious, too likely to generate sympathy or legal challenges. Much better to include women while neutralizing their impact, to provide opportunities while maintaining control, to celebrate diversity while preserving uniformity of thought. My male colleagues have become masters of defensive inclusion, experts at providing access without sharing power, at creating the appearance of equality while maintaining the reality of dominance. The women who succeed in environments like this become unwitting ambassadors for inequality, living proof that the system works for those who approach it correctly. Examples of how far women can go if they just learn to navigate existing structures, rather than challenge them directly. We become case studies in individual merit overcoming supposed barriers, evidence that systemic change isn't necessary because individual change is sufficient. Our achievements validate their approaches while invalidating our original critiques. They can point to our success and ask what more we want, why we can't be satisfied with the opportunities we've been given, why we insist on seeing discrimination where they see accommodation. Sitting here now, successful and respected and fundamentally defeated. Understand that my male colleagues never needed to win the argument about workplace equality. They just needed to win the argument about how to pursue it. To convince women like me that gradual change is more effective than direct challenge. That accommodation is more realistic than transformation. That individual success is more important than collective empowerment. They've successfully redirected feminist energy into channels that serve their interests, turned potential agents of change into testimonies for the status quo, convinced us that our compromises represent mature wisdom rather than strategic defeat. The most insidious part is how reasonable it all seems in retrospect, how logical the progression from confrontation to accommodation appears, how much sense it makes to focus on building relationships before challenging power, to work within existing systems rather than against them, to pursue individual advancement rather than systemic transformation. They've made their preferred approach seem like the only viable option, the only path that leads to real success rather than principled failure. They've trained us to police ourselves and each other, to view direct advocacy as naive and counterproductive, to see accommodation as sophisticated and strategic. What they've created is a perfect system for maintaining inequality while appearing progressive, for providing opportunities without sharing power, for celebrating diversity without embracing transformation, for managing feminist concerns without addressing feminist critiques. They've learned to turn women's ambitions against women's principles, to use our desire for success to neutralize our commitment to change, to make us complicit in maintaining the very structures we once sought to transform. It's a masterpiece of defensive strategy, more effective than any form of direct oppression, because it enlists the oppressed in policing themselves. And the worst part is knowing that this cycle will continue, that other young women will join this company with idealistic goals about creating change, that they'll face the same choices I faced between belonging and beliefs, that most will choose belonging as I did, that their successes will become evidence against the need for systemic transformation, that their achievements will be used to justify the continued marginalization of those who won't compromise, that the system will continue to perfect its methods of defensive inclusion. Learning from each generation of women how to better neutralize potential threats to existing power structures. My male colleagues have won not through superior moral authority or logical arguments, but through superior understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. They figured out how to make resistance personally costly and accommodation personally rewarding, how to isolate advocates and fragment potential opposition, how to use individual success stories to justify systemic inequality, how to appear progressive while remaining fundamentally unchanged. They've created a system that can absorb and neutralize any amount of feminist energy, turning potential agents of transformation into guardians of the status quo, converting advocates for change into testimonies for accommodation. In the end, that whispered conversation in the break room was prophetic. Never be alone with her, ever. They were right to be afraid of direct engagement with feminist advocacy, right to recognize that one-on-one conversations might lead to genuine dialogue about inequality, right to understand that their comfort depended on controlling the terms of interaction. What they figured out was that isolation wasn't the answer. Inclusion was much more effective, bringing women into the system while ensuring they become invested in maintaining it, providing success while requiring silence about the conditions that made success necessary, offering achievement while demanding gratitude for the opportunity to achieve. Now I'm alone in a much more fundamental way than I ever was when they were avoiding me, alone with the knowledge of what I've become, alone with the understanding of how completely I've been neutralized, alone with the recognition that my success validates their approach while invalidating my principles. They don't need to avoid me anymore because I've learned to avoid challenging them. Don't need to protect themselves from my advocacy because I've learned to advocate in ways that serve their interests. Don't need to isolate me because I've learned to isolate myself from anything that might threaten my carefully constructed professional relationships. I've become exactly what they wanted, a successful woman who proves their system works, while ensuring that it never has to change. Be me, 25-yo feminist named Emily. Have blue hair, septum ring, pronouns in bio, the whole starter pack. Gender studies degree, minor in Twitter arguments. Woke up every morning, think, damn, patriarchy sucks. Man bad, woman oppressed, etc. Constantly tweet about smashing the system. Unironically think abolishing gender will solve climate change. Every day is a struggle against male privilege. Even my cat is a misogynist for scratching my "this is what a feminist looks like" poster. Spend nights doom scrolling, drinking boxed wine, muttering about white men. One day, enlightenment strikes. If men are so privileged, what if I became a man? Galaxy Brain PNG. Begin research. How to transition to male. Reddit says testosterone will unlock secret achievement. Man mode. Go to doctor, demand testosterone, cite 37 studies and 8 Twitter threads. Doctor tries to ask if I'm sure. Don't question my identity, bigot. Walk out with prescription and validation. Start tea next day. Everyone online clapping. Yas King in DMs. Start documenting the journey on TikTok for clout. Hashtag transitioning for justice. First week, nothing happens. Second week, voice cracks. Start growing 2 chin hairs. Feeling powerful, like a level 1 barbarian. Friends notice new confidence. One says, Emily, you seem different. It's Emmett now. Respect my journey. They she xe ghost self attack helicopter pronouns. All pronouns are valid unless you use he him unironically. Update Twitter bio. Transmask, ex-feminist, fighting patriarchy from the inside. Expecting doors to open, respect to flow, patriarchy to collapse, collapse in confusion. Instead, shit gets weird. First L. Start getting weird stares in men's bathrooms. Guy next to me, you lost, bud? Nervous laughter. Just try to pee. Realize there are no scented candles or period product baskets here. Just piss, silence, existential dread. Dudes don't even wash hands. Witness grown man leave without flushing. Mentally file this as patriarchal oppression. Next L. Trying to talk to other dudes at gym. Expecting bro solidarity. Walk up to buff guy. Hey man, nice form. Get the don't talk to me look. Realize there's an unspoken code among men. No talking. Awkwardly pretend to adjust weights I can't lift. Sweating from more than just testosterone. Accidentally grunt too loud. Everyone looks. Try to blend in. Fail miserably. Week 3. Voice deeper. Acne everywhere. Jawline trying its best. Pronouns in workplace email. Coworkers confused. HR terrified to misgender. Boss calls me Emmett for first time. Tiny dopamine hit. Still feels off. Lunch break with male coworkers. Expecting discourse on societal constructs. Instead, fantasy football. Crypto. Dick jokes. Pretend to understand. Laugh at wrong part of joke. Silence. Eat sandwich in peace. Miss talking about The Handmaid's Tale. Start craving pumpkin spice lattes. Try to suppress. Week 4. Testosterone rage. Punch a pillow. Now have to buy new pillow. Emotions weird. Crying less. Anger more. Text ex-girlfriend. I understand men now. She blocks me. Family dinner. Announce transition. Dad, didn't you say men were the enemy? Mom, at least you'll finally cut your hair. Uncle, so you're like Caitlyn Jenner but backwards? Leave table. Eat vegan nuggets alone. Dog still loves me. Or maybe he's just hungry. First time shirtless at beach. Feel liberated, then sunburned. Top surgery scars. Small kid asks if I fought a shark. Nod solemnly. Whisper patriarchy. Start noticing things. Men's pockets are deeper, but so are emotional wounds. Can't ask for directions, that's illegal now. Try to cry at Pixar movie. Nothing comes out. Only testosterone and confusion. Realize how lonely guys actually are. DM feminist Discord. No one answers. New friends. Chad, Kyle, and beer. Dating apps. Set to trans man. Get one match. It's a bot selling crypto. Message. Hey handsome, wanna invest? Even bots ignore me when I say I'm broke. Try to hit up old college friend. She says, sorry, I don't date men. Remind her I'm the same person. She blocks me. Attend trans support group. Tell story about becoming a man to fight the patriarchy. Get blank stares. One dude whispers, bro, we're all just trying to pee in peace. Realize nobody actually cares about toppling society. They just want top surgery and affordable rent. Week 6. Side effects. Voice cracks during Zoom call. Accidentally say, bruh, instead of gender is a spectrum. Muscles getting bigger, but so is existential dread. Buy beard oil, end up with patchy chin strap. TikTok comments roasting me for trying too hard. Reply with, it's called living my truth, Becky. Someone on Twitter asks if I'm a traitor to feminism. Write 12-paragraph thread explaining my journey. Lose 500 followers instantly. Gain 2 new followers, both with anime profile pics. Mom says I look just like grandpa. He was an alcoholic and died in a lawnmower accident. Hope that's not foreshadowing. New wardrobe. Cargo shorts, ironic t-shirts, sneakers. Throw away the future is female hoodie. Try on dad's old baseball cap. Look in mirror. Still feel weirdly like Emily, but with sideburns. Week 7. Start noticing men do not get complimented. Once a week, get nice shirt from old lady at bus stop. Almost cry. Testosterone blocks it. Remember when every Insta selfie got yas queen slay. Now just get LOL or silence. Men be out here surviving on one compliment per year. Begin to miss girlhood, but also remember girlhood meant creepy DMs. Trade-off is real. Decide to infiltrate the patriarchy more deeply. Apply for entry-level finance job. Interview. What's your biggest weakness? Say, caring too much about gender equality. They laugh. Think I'm joking. Get hired. First day. All guys. No small talk. Just grunts. And did you see the game? Haven't watched sports since USWNT lost in 2016. Pretend to love football. Google, what is a touchdown? Under the desk. Slack notifications. Lunch. Group of dudes. One brings protein shake. Nobody eats carbs. Try to talk about gender pay gap. They stare. Ask if I want to do push-ups instead. Agree to prove masculinity. Pull muscle. End up in bathroom for 30 mins. First office injury report. Tried too hard. Boss brings up guys night. Suspiciously sounds like a front for illegal activities. Turns out just beer and arguing over best superhero. Say Wonder Woman. Room goes silent. Quickly change to Batman, obviously. Acceptance unlocked. Begin to realize that male socialization is basically ritualized bullying. Insults are affection. Silence is respect. Fart jokes are universal. Spend the whole night trying to learn rules of banter. Miss the days when I could just hug a friend and call it therapy. Tinder adventure continues. Swipe right on every girl. Get 1 match per 500. Bio. Trans guy. Feminist. Here to dismantle toxic masculinity and maybe yours. Haha. First DM. So, what's in your pants? Tell her, mostly anxiety and a packer from Etsy. She unmatches. Decide to try Grindr for science. Immediately overwhelmed by unsolicited pics. One guy messages, "You like football?" Say yes. Instantly invited to watch the game and chill. Consider going, but still Googling what is a down. Week 8. Facial hair coming in. Start a mustache. Looks like 12-yo trying to buy beer. Coworkers start calling me young man. One tries to give me life advice, tells me to never get married. Nod along. Pretend I understand. Remember every time men say, "My wife is scary," and now I'm like, same bro. Get invited to bachelor party. Expecting wild debauchery, feminist in me ready to take notes for Twitter expose. Turns out to be poker, pizza, and arguments over which Star Wars is best. One dude quietly cries about his ex. Everyone pretends not to see. Realize men's emotional support is don't mention it. Hope he survives. Try to hug him. Everyone freezes. Make it awkward. Switch to fist bump. Internal voice. The patriarchy hurts men too. Begin to feel empathy for the enemy. One day on street, hear someone shout, "Hey, Emily!" Turn, see old college feminist friend. Awkward standoff. She looks me up and down, eyes, beard, stubble, winces. "So, you're like a dude now?" "I'm Emmett." "Yeah, still me, just different plumbing." She launches into speech about how I'm reinforcing gender norms. Try to explain gender is a spectrum. She says, "Sounds like internalized misogyny." Remind her I still hate men. I just am one now. She posts about me on Twitter. Thread gets 8 likes. I reply, "Get dogpiled. Lose 100 more followers. At least my ratio is still better than Elon's." Visit parents again. Dad starts calling me champ. Mom says I look like her brother now. Uncle cracks, "Where'd your boobs go?" Joke. Family tension is thicker than my new jawline. Dog looks confused, probably just hungry again. Try to explain gender fluidity to grandma. She asks if I'm still voting for Bernie. Nod. It's easier that way. Try to reconnect with old feminist book club. Show up. Everyone stares. Someone asks, "Are you here to mansplain intersectionality?" Try to be chill. Say, "I'm still a comrade, just with more testosterone." One girl whispers, "He's a sleeper agent for the patriarchy." Get assigned to fetch snacks. Spend entire meeting in kitchen. Miss discussing bell hooks. Leave. Eat the hummus alone. Therapy session. Tell therapist about existential dread. She asks, "Do you regret transitioning?" Say, "I regret thinking the patriarchy would be easier from this side." She writes something in her notebook. Probably patient is terminally online. Tells me to try yoga. Join men's yoga class. Just a bunch of dudes grunting and farting. No one asks about my journey. Almost refreshing. Week 10. Beard fully coming in. Feel like a low-budget lumberjack. Buy flannel. Now fully Emmett, the soft boy. Start listening to Joe Rogan for research. Gain 5 IQ points. Lose 3 chromosomes. Twitter feed is 50% lifting memes, 50% how to fix your life as a man threads. Consider starting a podcast called Dismantling the Patriarchy, one protein shake at a time. Realize nobody wants to listen to a trans dude explain feelings. Finally, a girl matches with me on Bumble. She's cute and likes astrology. She asks, "What's your sign?" Say, "Sagittarius, rising socialist." She laughs, agrees to coffee date. Show up, nervous, try not to overthink. She says, "So, you're like a feminist guy?" Say, "Sorta, used to be a woman, still hate the wage gap." She blinks, says, "Wow, you're like 2 minorities at once." Not sure if that's a win. She talks for 2 hours straight about Mercury in retrograde. I nod, try to keep up, miss being able to just order a pumpkin spice latte and rant about manspreading. Date ends, she says, "You're a good listener, but you have weird energy." No second date. Back to the grind. Week 12. Testosterone in full swing. New mood, angry at inanimate objects. Drop phone, want to fight it. Punch pillow. Pillow still undefeated. Develop urge to explain random facts to strangers. Catch self about to mansplain how microwaves work to roommate. Stop. Question entire life. Go on Twitter, see Emmett is a traitor thread trending in niche feminist circles. Comments, "He's just proving men are trash." Reply, "I was trash before, just a different bin." Blocked by 3 more people. Gain new follower with a Pepe avatar. Start working out for real. Lift weights, benching a solid 50 pounds. Old guy at gym grunts approvingly. Suddenly, one of the bros, first time anyone has given me a nice set that wasn't about pronouns. Begin to like lifting, angry music, primal grunting, but still miss group yoga and scented candles. Try to introduce scented candles to the gym. Everyone looks at me like I farted during deadlifts. Guess I'll just stick to pre-workout. Feminist book club ex-friends now hosting safe space event. Not invited. Message group. "Hey, I can still bring hummus." Read receipts. No reply. Guess I'm officially the enemy now. Make own event. Trans mask. Solitude hour. Attendance. Just me. 1 squirrel outside window. Try Reddit FTM for support. Most posts. How to grow a beard or which binder makes you look the most like a hot topic manager. Post story about dismantling the patriarchy from inside. Top comment. "Bro, we just want insurance to cover tea." Fair point. Get 1 DM. You're kinda cringe but based. Feel seen for first time in months. Workplace. Water cooler banter is now 50% sports, 30% complaining, 20% pretending not to have feelings. Try to suggest new break room plant. Everyone, that's gay. Realize I can't say that's misogynist anymore. New rules. Secretly plant a succulent anyway. Nobody notices. Succulent thriving. Only thing around here that is. Dating life. Try to message old flame. She says, I don't date men. Remind her I used to be her lesbian friend. She says, not the same. Ouch, MP4. Try gay bar. Introduced as egg cracked in reverse. No one laughs. One guy buys me a drink out of pity. Spend evening in corner. Try to remember what flirting even is. Realize all my game was feminist theory and cat memes. Neither work here. Go home. Eat ice cream. Watch YouTube videos on how to talk to girls as a trans guy. Step 1. Stop being weird. Mission failed. Therapy session number 3. Therapist. Are you feeling more yourself? Me. I feel like I'm undercover in a sitcom no one is watching. She writes, patient is terminally online. Probable 4chan exposure. Suggests hiking for mental health. Try hiking group. All dudes. Nobody talks for 2 hours. Actually kinda nice. At end, one guy says, nice boots. That's the most emotionally supportive thing I've heard in weeks. Week 15. Beard patchy but proud. Start wearing beanies. People start calling me man bun guy. It's a step up from blue hair girl. Reconnect with old high school friend. He says, dude, you're chill now. Testosterone did you good. Internal existential crisis intensifies. Family dinner number 3. Grandpa asks, so when are you getting a real job? Tell him I work in social media. He asks, you mean you're unemployed? Grandma slides me $10 under the table. Thanks, Grandma. Gonna use it for more beard oil. Try group therapy for trans men. Everyone looks tired. One guy talks about losing friends, another about getting misgendered by the barista. I say, my old feminist group thinks I'm a traitor. Everyone nods in solidarity. Realize being a trans man is just unlocking a new flavor of loneliness. Random guy in elevator asks for the time. Almost jump. Nobody ever talked to Emily in elevators. Give him the time, he grunts. Thanks. That's peak male intimacy right there. Twitter DM from old professor. She says, I hope you find what you're looking for, but the struggle isn't over just because you switched sides. Send her a thank you meme. She replies with a bell hooks quote. Sigh. Nostalgia for simpler times when my biggest problem was men spreading their legs on the subway. Start getting more facial recognition as male in public. No more excuse me ma'am at Starbucks. Now it's hey bud or sir. Barista misspells Emmett as emit. Close enough. Tip jar says men are trash on it. I put in $1 for old time's sake. Weekly calls with mom. She asks if I'm dating anyone. Say, no, women don't want to date men anymore. She says, tell me about it. Dad in the background yells, amen. Family bonding, I guess. Try going stealth for a week. No mention of trans or feminist stuff. Just Emmett, just a guy, nothing special. Feel invisible, but safe. Also kind of boring. Miss being the loud girl with opinions. Now I'm the quiet guy with sideburns. Nobody expects me to save the world anymore. Low-key relief, high-key identity crisis. Week 17. Existential dread at maximum. Run into ex-girlfriend at Whole Foods. She doesn't recognize me until I say her name. She asks, is this your final form? I say, yeah, but maybe not my final haircut. Awkward silence. She buys kombucha. I buy beef jerky. Walk out, both wondering what the hell just happened. Week 18. Testosterone levels high, patience levels low. Start yelling at cars in traffic. Realize I've become my dad. Begin to appreciate cargo shorts, pockets for everything. Old feminist self screams in the distance, patriarchy tool. Ignore it, too busy buying more snacks and not being judged for it. Try to reconnect with feminist Discord server. Log in, instantly hit with 50 new gender channels. Channel for frog self pronouns, channel for anti-dog memes, channel for cis male venting not allowed. Post, hey it's Emmett, used to be Emily, still hate the wage gap. Mod replies, allies can listen, not lead. Someone else, you're literally a man now, stay in your lane. Get muted for performative activism. Didn't even get to post my artisanal hummus recipe. Log off, eat hummus out of spite. Accidentally make friend at gym. His name is Chad, but he's actually nice. Teaches me how to deadlift. Asks 0 questions about pronouns. We talk about Star Wars and how to get deodorant stains out of black shirts. He says, dude, you ever just want to scream? I say, yeah, like every day. We scream in the parking lot together. Feel alive for the first time in months. Is this friendship? Text old feminist group. I made a friend named Chad. Left on red. Start writing medium think piece. What if the patriarchy is just everyone being lonely? Get halfway. Realize nobody reads medium anymore. Delete draft. Post on Reddit. Get 5 upvotes. 1 cringe. Commenter says, bro, just lift more and think less. Am I becoming Chad? Dating attempts at all-time low. Message on Bumble. Hey, I'm trans, into memes, and can cook vegan tacos. Reply, so, do you still have boobs or what? Consider going monk mode. Joining chess club instead. At least chess pieces don't ghost you. Work happy hour. New guy calls me Bud and asks if I want to join fantasy football. I have no idea what that is. Say, yeah bro, totally. Immediately forced to draft a team. Pick based based on who has the coolest name. Somehow pick all kickers. Become office meme. Emmett picks only kickers. Honestly, at least they're talking to me. Random girl at coffee shop asks if I'm a barista. Say no, just here for the Wi-Fi. She says, you look like you read Bukowski. Never read Bukowski, but nod anyway. She tells me her ex was a barista with a man bun. Unsure if this is flirting or trauma dumping. Offer her hummus. She says she's keto. Conversation over. Week 20. Get called sir by customer service rep. Almost cry. Testosterone blocks it. Remember when I was ma'am and everyone expected me to apologize for existing. Now I'm expected to assemble IKEA furniture for fun. Buy bookshelf. Fail to assemble. Call my dad for help. He says, you're a man now. Figure it out. Use 200 swear words. Shelf wobbles but stands. Ultimate rite of passage. Run into ex-roommate, they them, at farmer's market. They glare at my beard. Say, hey, it's Emmett now. They say, men are why we can't have nice things. I say, honestly, same. Awkward truce. Buy avocados. Leave. Decide to try therapy again. Therapist, do you feel seen? Me, I feel like an NPC in someone else's gender quest. She writes, identity, undefined, seeking side quest. Tells me to try group improv. Go to group. Everyone there is also discovering themselves. We act out a scene about toxic masculinity. I get cast as guy who says chill. Typecast already. TikTok, make update video. 3 months on T. How the patriarchy fights back. First comment, go off king. Second comment, I liked you better as Emily. Third comment, ratioed by testosterone. Pin it. Start noticing new paranoia. Everyone thinks I'm just a regular guy. Nobody cares about my deep thoughts on patriarchy anymore. Try to explain Judith Butler to Chad. He says, bro, you gotta let go. Let go for 10 minutes. Feel weirdly at peace. Pick it back up. Panic returns. Week 22. Get invited to Guy's Cabin weekend. Pack flannel, beer, and Book of Audre Lorde essays, just in case. Trip is just dudes eating meat, skipping rocks, and refusing to talk about feelings. Someone brings up the wife, and everyone groans in sympathy. I say, women are complicated, man. They all nod, bond over collective confusion, end up sitting by lake, looking at stars, not saying anything. Realize silence is how men say, I love you. After weekend, text from mom, how was your retreat? Say, nobody cried, nobody argued. 10-10 masculinity. She says, did you learn anything? Say, yeah, nobody knows what they're doing. She says, welcome to adulthood. Start getting used to being ignored in public. Nobody expects me to smile. Nobody asks if I need help. Miss the attention, but not the smile sweetheart comments. Trade one invisibility for another. Week 24. Realize I have become everything I used to roast. Own 3 different brands of beard oil. Care deeply about lawn maintenance. Spend 2 hours organizing power tools by size. Have opinions on grill brands. Accidentally let out a dad joke at party. Everyone groans. Realize I am the dad friend now. Look at old photos of Emily. Feel weird nostalgia, but not regret. More like, damn, you really tried everything, huh? Wonder if any of this was worth it. Then remember, at least now I can pee standing up. Small victories. Week 25. Start every morning with black coffee and resentment. Face in mirror. Beard patchy. Eyes tired. Confidence somewhere between small dog and middle manager. Twitter bio now just says, recovering idealist. Part-time man. Followers mostly bots and confused TERFs. Begin to enjoy the peace of being ignored. Nobody expects performative wokeness. Nobody expects emotional labor. Just, hey man, you got a lighter? At the bus stop. I don't smoke, but I start carrying a lighter just to help dudes out. Is this what brotherhood is? Try online support group for detransitioned feminists just to lurk. Full of ex-Emilys and ex-Jessicas all typing in lowercase and sipping LaCroix. Biggest debate. Was it the patriarchy or just depression? Nobody knows, but they've all got feelings. One person says, sometimes the only way out is through. Leave Zoom meeting, feeling slightly less alone, slightly more confused. Chad texts, yo, wanna watch the game? Say yes. Show up. Forget which teams are playing. Pretend to care. Google who to root for in sports. Accidentally cheer at wrong time. Chad throws chips at me. Everyone laughs. This is male affection. After game, Chad says, you ever feel like you don't fit in anywhere? Look at him. Nod. He says, same bro, same. Realize the secret. Nobody fits in. Everyone just fakes it. Walk home. Think about the journey. Traded being oppressed for being depressed. Traded attention for anonymity. Traded men are trash for, bro, you good? Miss girlhood drama, but also don't miss girlhood drama. Life is just a never-ending trade-off. Workplace now considers me one of the guys. Invited to after-work wings. Someone jokes, can you believe Emmett used to be woke? I laugh, but inside, tiny feminist ghost haunts me. Still correct grammar in group chat. Still use they pronouns for coworkers. Can't fully switch sides. Too late for that. Try therapy again. Therapist asks, what do you want, Emmett? Realize I don't know. Say, I want to feel like myself, but every version version of myself is cringe. She writes, millennial problem. Prescribes meditation, but my brain just replays TikToks of cats falling downstairs. Week 30. First real date since transition. Match with goth girl on Hinge. Bio. Only here for memes and tarot. We meet at a park, both wearing too much black. She says, so you're a guy, but not like a guy. I say, more like a DIY man. She laughs, says she likes weirdos. Talk for hours, mostly about how dumb astrology is, but we both know our moon signs. She asks if I miss being a woman. I say, honestly, I just miss free drinks and not being expected to fix printers. She says, you'll get there, man. Not sure where there is, but at least I'm not alone. Spend more time in dude spaces. Group chats now full of memes. Zero emotional depth. One guy randomly posts, just divorced, LOL. Next message is, who's up for Apex Legends? Nobody says sorry, just add me, bro. Realize this is what support looks like for men. It's not much, but it's honest work. Week 33. Get invited to bachelor party. Plan, road trip, whiskey, camping. No vegan options, just meat and more meat. Somebody asks what I think about women now. Say, they're cool, just complicated. Everyone nods, deep sighs all around. Start to realize most men are just confused, tired, and terrified of group texts from their girlfriends. One guy says, wish I could talk to my dad like this. Nobody answers, but we all stare into the fire like it's the void. Random 2 a.m. thought, was I ever really a feminist or just bored? Remember the Tumblr days, the marches, the hashtags? Remember the times I thought transitioning would be smashing the system? Now realize, systems don't care, people don't change, you just get new problems. At least my shoes fit better now. Week 35. HR asked me to do a diversity talk. Say sure. Stand in front of Zoom screen, 40 faces staring back. Say, I tried escaping the patriarchy by becoming a man. Turns out it's just as weird over here. Awkward silence. Someone laughs. Summed up 5 years in 5 seconds. End with, all I learned is nobody has it easy. Not men, not women, not anyone. Also, get therapy. Get 3 emails after. One from HR, one from confused boomer, one from someone who says thank you. Small win. Week 38. Get called dude by 3 strangers in one day. Realize that's more validation than my feminist group ever gave me. Miss the endless DMs, but not the constant drama. Now it's just sup and yo and how much can you bench? The answer is still not much. Try to reconnect with old identity. Wear eyeliner. Feel like a fraud. Put on cargo shorts. Feel like a different fraud. Embrace fraudulence as new gender. Gender fluid. More like gender fraudulent. Laugh at my own joke. Nobody else does. Week 40. Chad gets dumped. Comes over with cheap beer. He says, bro, women are so confusing. I say, yeah, but I used to be one. Shouldn't I have the cheat codes? We both laugh, but it dies quick. He says, you ever just feel like nobody cares what happens to you? Realize that's been my vibe for months. Lie awake that night. Scroll old feminist threads. Men have all the power. Men have all the privilege. Men don't know real oppression. Stare at my rent bill, unread therapy emails, unanswered texts. Compare to when I was Emily, always in a group chat, always checked up on. As Emmett, nobody notices if I'm sad. Nobody asks how I'm doing unless I say, bro, I think I'm dying. If I mess up at work, man up. If I'm lonely, just get over it. If I vent, people call it weak or complaining. Nobody buys me a drink. Nobody cares if I make it home safe. Start keeping a list. Stuff nobody told me about being a man. 1. Everyone expects you to be stoic, 24/7. 2. Emotional support, maybe a meme, maybe a fist bump. 3. If you want help, better ask your dog. 4. Expressing pain is a punchline, not a cry for help. 5. Compliments are rarer than lunar eclipses. 6. If you cry, people look away like you've farted in church. 7. You're just expected to deal with it. 8. People cross the street when you walk behind them at night, even when you're the scared one. 9. Male privilege. Nobody will help you unless you bleed out in public. 10. Most people only see you as a threat or a joke. Sit with Chad on the porch, both of us staring into the night. He says, man, sometimes I wish I could just talk about my feelings, but I say, I get it, bro. I didn't, but now I do. We don't hug, just sip beer and stare at the moon. It's the closest thing to therapy I've gotten all year. Run into old feminist friend at protest. She starts her usual spiel. Men still have all the power. I say, you ever seen a grown man cry alone in his car? She rolls her eyes, says, boo-hoo, must be hard being king. I try to explain, it's not like that. You never really notice how invisible men are or how disposable. She calls me brainwashed by patriarchy. I walk away, feeling more alone than ever. Therapy session, tell therapist. All those years I thought men were living on easy mode. Turns out it's just a different flavor of misery. More silent, more lonely. Therapist nods, says most men don't even make it to therapy. Google men suicide rates. Stare at the numbers. Feel sick. Remember all those times I made fun of male tears memes. Karma's a bitch. Final realization. As Emily, I had support. As Emmett, I have silence. Nobody gives a damn unless I give them a reason. Nobody checks if I made it home safe. If I fail, nobody will ask why. If I disappear, maybe Chad will notice, but that's it. The world expects men to take every hit and keep smiling. Most men suffer quietly. Nobody cares until it's too late. New respect for the dudes who never complain. New regret for all those male privilege takes. New anger that nobody talks about how much men hurt. No cheat code, no safety net, just the void and a couple of memes. Patriarchy wasn't a fortress, it was a prison with no windows. It's just everyone lost in the dark, pretending not to feel the cold. Keep fighting, brother. Someone out there needs to know you made it.